Hi, I'm Diane, and you may not recognize me because you're used to seeing me post pictures post workout with a very sweaty face. I'm here today to talk to you about storytelling. I chose storytelling as my topic because our brains naturally release oxytocin and cortisol when we hear stories, and it helps us to make connections and meaning with other people. So my goal today is to connect with you and that you will take away at least one thing to apply to your own life and your own personal development. I'm going to be referencing my favorite author and well-known researcher, Brené Brown. And the book that I'm referencing is my favorite book of hers. I've read them all, Rising Strong. Brené Brown starts Rising Strong off by saying this: if we are brave enough, often enough, we will fall. This is a book about what it takes to get back up. I'm going to share my story with you, how I fell, and how I'm working on getting myself back up. 2 nights ago, I was sitting with my husband sharing my struggles on how to organize my thoughts so that I could share a meaningful message with all of you. And he started asking me some questions. And my favorite question he asked me was, all right, before you started this challenge, what are 3 words you would use to describe yourself on a typical Wednesday? Tired, unsettled, mostly happy. So I'm asking you, before you started this challenge, what are 3 words you would use to describe yourself on a typical Wednesday? Then my husband, Clay, said, all right, how would you like to describe yourself on a typical Wednesday? I said, well, that's easy. I want to be happy, I want to feel proud, and I want to have energy. He said, okay, so you started here before the challenge, and you're moving towards here. How did you decide to start moving here? And so I thought about that for a while, and I started revisiting Brené Brown's work in her book, Rising Strong, and I decided to think about what it is about her book that's had an impact on my life. And I knew it was the storytelling that has resonated with me, and I used a process that she shares in her book to help me get back up. So in order to get from here to here, in order to get back up, I needed to change the stories that I was telling in my head. Because the stories that we make up in our heads about a situation, instead of finding out the real truth, is going to inhibit our potential. See, what I was doing is I was making up these stories in my head where I was rationalizing my unhealthy behaviors and I was blaming others. I was in a very negative headspace. Oh, I made all sorts of excuses not to exercise regularly or eat healthy. I was stress eating. I was blaming outside stresses for my choices and behaviors. That's the story that I was telling in my head. It's because of this why I'm not doing this. It's because of this why I'm not doing this. That was my negative narrative. But here's the thing. If we own our own stories and our disappointments and our failures and our heartbreaks, that is what's going to give us the power and courage to write a brave new ending. That comes from Brené Brown. So my goal is to write a brave new ending, which will help me get from here to here. So I will feel happy and I will feel proud and I won't feel tired anymore. I just have to write a new ending, but there's a process involved. I'm going to share that process with you in hopes that I leave you with something that you can take away. So she outlines this in 3 steps. So the first thing we need to do, she calls, is the reckoning. That's where we walk into our story and we recognize our emotions, and we get curious about it, and we get curious about our feelings. So for me, walking into my story, I had to recognize that I was feeling unsettled, and that I was feeling confused, and I was feeling sad, and I was feeling angry, and I was feeling victimized, and I was playing this blame game. And I had to really sit down with all of this and start asking some really tough questions, which leads us into the rumbling. And the rumbling is my favorite part because it's messy and it's challenging and it's painful. And the rumbling is when we own our own story. So we walked into our story, we're hearing it in our head, but now we need to own our story. And this is when we need to get very, very honest about our stories. And we need to think about what we're making up about our struggles. And we need to challenge these confabulations to determine what the truth really is. And this is a process, and it takes time. The rumbling part is where we get honest about our struggles and we challenge these narratives. And as we dig into these topics around the boundaries and shame and resentment and forgiveness, that's where we develop those key learnings about who we really are. And so for me, I had to face some pain that I was experiencing, some really deep, dark pain. And in order to face that pain, I had to start talking about my pain. And I had to accept that there were some things in my life that I have been pushing down for years that is deeply impacting my ability to be happy and to be proud and to have energy and be such a better person than I was being. In this rumbling stage, as I was accepting my struggles, I made the decision of going to see a counselor. And I now drive an hour every 2 weeks, and I go see a counselor to help deal with this pain. This rumbling part is painful, but it's real. And I really like how Brené Brown says, the rumble is where wholeheartedness is cultivated, and that's where change begins. Which leads us into the revolution, the first stage of this process. And that's where we write a new ending to our story. And that's the stage that I'm at. I'm in the process of writing a new ending. I think it's going to take a long time. I'm excited. I'm scared. I'm hopeful. And as Brené Brown says, that using this new, braver story to change how we engage with the world will ultimately transform the way we live, the way we love, the way we parent, and the way that we lead. So we walk into our story, we own our story, and then we write a new ending. But in order to do that, we have to dig really deep and find out the truth of these stories that we are making up in our heads. And interestingly enough, today in our workout, Shaun T talked about screening the noise in our head and moving from the I can't do this and this is hard and changing that narrative into something positive. I thought that was interesting that his message connected what I was going to share with all of you. When you are in the rumbling stage of finding out the truth, some questions you can ask yourself are this. Sorry, let me back up. I want you to think of a story that you've been telling yourself in your head that is stopping you from living the life that you want to lead. Then ask yourself these questions. What more do I need to learn and understand about the situation? What more do I need to learn and understand about the people in the story that I'm making up? And what more do I need to learn about myself? I'd like to leave you with something very profound that Brene has written. All right, it's on my phone, so I'm just going to read off of it. Manifesto of the Brave and Brokenhearted. There is no greater threat to the critics and cynics and fearmongers than those of us who are willing to fall because we have learned how to rise. With skinned knees and bruised hearts, we choose owning our stories of struggle over hiding, over hustling, over pretending. When we deny our stories, they define us. When we run from struggle, we are never free, so we turn toward truth and look it in the eye. We will not be characters in our stories, not villains, not victims, not even heroes. We are the authors of our lives. We write our own daring endings. We craft love from heartbreak, compassion from shame, grace from disappointment, courage from failure. Showing up is our power. Story is our way home. Truth is our song. We are the brave and brokenhearted. We are rising strong. I thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this. I ask you, what is your story? And what steps can you take to own your story, to rumble with your story? And what will changing the ending to your story look like? Thank you.